This is week 6 of the chronological reading of the New Testament. About the time that Paul wrote to the Galatian Christians, just after the events recorded in Acts chapter 15, James wrote his letter to the Hebrew Christians who'd been scattered among the nations. Many of these people would be the ones who got saved on the day of Pentecost when they were staying in Jerusalem, God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. 3,000 people got saved or accepted Jesus as their Messiah on that day, and then thousands more did the same over the next few years. Most of these believers stayed in Jerusalem as there was no church anywhere else. But this was not God's plan. Jesus said, "Go and make disciples of all nations." And so when persecution broke out against the church, as recorded in Acts chapter 8, all except for the apostles were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Jesus had 4 brothers and a number of sisters. The sisters' names are not given in the Bible, but the brothers are identified as James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon. Judas is the author of the New Testament letter called Jude. He refers to himself as Jude, a servant of Jesus Christ and a brother of James. And so the author of this letter is James, the brother of Jesus. During his earthly life, Jesus' brothers and sisters didn't believe he was the Messiah. In fact, they mocked him and spoke sarcastically towards him. It was Jesus' resurrection from the dead that finally convinced them that he was who he claimed to be. Paul makes special reference in 1 Corinthians 15:7 that Jesus specifically appeared to his brother James after he rose from the dead. From then on, James became a believer and a significant leader, eventually becoming the senior leader of the church in Jerusalem. And so, in the late 40s AD, James starts hearing some disconcerting news about the Hebrew believers who had scattered to various parts of the world. And it's these issues he addresses in this letter. The New Testament authors wrote their books and letters in the context of their culture and economy of the day. The Roman world of the first century was incredibly poor. There were between 70 and 100 million people living in the Roman Empire in that day, and about 50% of them were slaves. The economy of the entire empire was dependent on slaves. Slaves had no legal rights and were viewed as the personal property of their masters. Some wealthy Romans owned as many as 20,000 slaves. Only a small number of people were wealthy. Most were poor and would live hand to mouth. Often the rich would treat the poor badly, and it was this issue that dominated James's teaching. He teaches that it's wrong to show favoritism to a person because they had wealth, and it's also wrong for the rich to oppress the poor. It is the responsibility of God's people to help the poor. In fact, he says religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. James is writing mainly to people who were poor and persecuted, and so he encourages them about the purpose of trials. Chapter 1 covers the topic of wisdom in tough times. Chapter 2 addresses the heresy that taught that because salvation is by faith in Jesus, then works are unnecessary. James makes it clear that good works will demonstrate true faith. This theme continues in chapters 3 and 4. Genuine faith doesn't just result in good works, it also results in good words and in true wisdom. Martin Luther, who became so gripped by the truth of salvation through faith apart from works, despised the book of James, referring to it as the epistle of straw. In his final chapter, James gives some great advice on 4 key areas to remember, especially during life's tough times. Be generous, be patient, be prayerful, and be caring. The book of James has a significant parallel to Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. It is classed as wisdom literature and is sometimes referred to as the book of Proverbs of the New Testament. Enjoy reading it this week. And if you'd like to go a bit deeper, you'll find a 5-part teaching series on this book on the Bayside Church website. Just click on the media button, select the archive teaching podcasts, and then scroll down till you find the book of James. See you next week.